Reacting to Tornado Alley of Europe.
Sponsored by Ground News. On the 6th of October, 1981, at around 5:04 p.m., this exact tornado formed right next to the Rotterdam Airport near Moerdijk in the Netherlands. At the same time, NLM City Hopper Flight 431 was lifting off the runway. As the plane ascended into the sky, it briefly flew through a layer of clouds, but as it came out on the other side, the plane found itself flying straight towards the tornado. The pilots didn't have enough time to react, and they flew directly into the funnel. The plane came out on the other side of the tornado completely disintegrated. It then fell from the sky, crashing into the ground, killing all 17 passengers on board. The data from the flight recorder actually showed a sudden increase in altitude, but that wasn't actually a sudden increase in altitude. That was the low pressure region of the tornado. So it has essentially been proven that the plane did indeed enter the funnel. It's a very tragic story, and it's a surprising story because not many people really think about tornadoes in the Netherlands or in Europe in general. They think of Kansas and Oklahoma, but tornadoes do happen in Europe, and they can be just as dangerous. And that's what we're talking about today. We're going to discuss the tornadic history of the many different regions of Europe, from the UK to Germany to Poland to France to Belgium to Spain to Italy, all over Europe. We're going to find out which countries and regions have the highest concentration of tornadic activity. We're going to discover Europe's tornado alleys. Let's get into it. Alright, let's start off with the United Kingdom, specifically looking at England with what I call the English Tornado Alley. Because, fun fact, England within the UK actually has more tornadoes per square foot than any country on Earth. Yes, including the US. England has 2.2 tornadoes a year per 10,000 square miles, while the US only has 1.2 tornadoes per 10,000 square miles. Now, it's a little bit misleading because technically England is a lot smaller than the US, and if you just took Florida, for example, there's actually 12 tornadoes per 10,000 square miles in Florida.
Wow.
Way more than England. So, yeah, it's a bit misleading. But either way, England and the UK in general do have some potential for some pretty wild tornadoes. Most of these tornadoes occur in the central plains of England, and they are very weak. Very, very weak. You can drive through them on the highway.
F-Zero then? So F-Zero.
Reed Timmer would be very proud of that tornado intercept. Very impressive. Stronger tornadoes do occur. One notable example is the December 8th, 1954 West London tornado. This was rated as a T7 or Toro 7 tornado, equivalent to an F3, with wind speeds in the 150 to 160 mile per hour range. Fortunately, no one was killed.
An F3 tornado?
Was the strongest of 7 in a larger tornado outbreak that struck the greater West London area. A large amount of destruction occurred at the Gunnersbury train station, where the iron roof collapsed on the 15 passengers. Amazingly, they all survived, but 8 were taken to the hospital. Tornado activity calmed in the UK for about 30 years. That is until the November 23rd, 1981 Great Britain tornado outbreak. This is actually the European equivalent of a super outbreak, as there were 104 tornadoes recorded throughout the central parts of England. But it wasn't as crazy as you'd think, as they were all extremely weak. There were 21 F unknowns, 24 F-Zeros, 57 F1s, and only 2 F2s.
Okay, that's not bad.
The T5 tornado occurred in Holyhead, where 20 homes were heavily damaged, and 1 mobile home was completely destroyed. In my tornado hotspots video, I mentioned how Birmingham, Alabama is hit by tornadoes all the time. It's a very active tornado hotspot within the US. Well, it turns out the original Birmingham, yes, Birmingham, England, which Birmingham, Alabama is named after, is a bit of a tornado hotspot itself. There have been 7 recorded tornadoes to hit Birmingham in the past 100 years, and the most recent being on July 28, 2005. Fortunately, no one was killed, but it was still the strongest tornado to hit the UK in 30 years. The neighborhoods of Balsall Heath and Sparkbrook were heavily damaged, including a primary school and a historic church, the latter of which would need to be demolished due to the damage. The US may have a larger and more violent tornadoes, but do you know what Europe has that the US doesn't have? History.
Older buildings too.
No, I'm kidding. Obviously the US has history. It has great history. I love US history. But European history, it goes way further back than the US's history. When it comes to Native Americans and tornadoes, there were stories and legends and lore, but there's never been a specific event that was documented. In Europe, though, we can go way back and find some ancient tornado tales. Like, for example, the October 17th, 1091 tornado that struck London was once believed to be the strongest documented tornado in UK history. Modern assessment of the event believed it to have been an EF4 or a T8, with wind speeds in the
EF4, wow.
180 miles per hour plus range. According to William of Malmesbury, a 12th century English historian, over 600 wooden houses were leveled, resulting in 2 fatalities. Malmesbury described it as a great spectacle for those watching from afar, but a terrifying experience for those standing near. Yeah, that sounds like a tornado to me. But enough about ancient tornado tales. I want to briefly mention some recent events. A beautiful tornadic waterspout occurred in Suffolk on July 31st, 2016.
I got family over there.
I'm very envious for those who got to witness this. It's very clean, very, very nice looking. On June 25th, 2021, a weak tornado made quite a mess in the Barking neighborhood of London. Cars were damaged and a few brick walls collapsed. And a very, very significant, very strong, possibly even an EF3 tornado struck the Channel Island of Jersey only a few months ago on November 26, 2023. It was the largest tornado to hit the UK since the West London tornado in 1954. This tornado tore roofs off and was rated as a T6 on the Toro scale. Very strong, especially for the UK. This tornado was part of a greater European windstorm that claimed 21 lives. Special shout out to Olivia for sending me these photos and videos. So the UK does have a mini tornado over the coast of England and does get strong EF2, low EF3 tornadoes. But overall, things are pretty tame. However, if we travel to the European mainland, things get a little more intense with what I call the Northern Europe Tornado Alley. But before we get to that, tornado season is upon us, and you're going to want to stay up to date with all the latest tornado coverage, and you can do so with today's sponsor, Ground News. Ground News is an application that takes thousands of news stories every day from news outlets all over the world and aggregates them into different
North Korea
categories
crap.
based on different political ideologies. This way you can see if a specific news story is covered by more liberal news outlets, more centric news outlets, or more conservative news outlets. Ground News can be very helpful in distinguishing reality from media bias. Like, for example, let's just do a quick search for tornado news stories. Well, overall, it looks like tornado-related media coverage is mostly centered. But looking at specific stories, this recent news story on Wisconsin's first tornado in February was mostly reported by center and left-leaning media outlets. And we can see
Mostly
all
local
the outlets'
TV.
articles right here, listed in one feed. Ground News even tells you the owner of the media outlet, all to give you a better understanding of the news you're consuming.
But I'm not using Ground News.
A very cool Ground News feature is the blind spot feature. This allows you to look at specific news stories that are being ignored by certain media groups on the left or the right. You can also customize your news feed with specific topics that you're interested in. The topics I follow are tornado and space. Go to ground.news/.
But I'm not interested in that stuff.
You can subscribe through my link for as little as $1 a month or get 30% off unlimited access to the Vantage subscription, which is the one that I use. Thank you so much to Ground News for sponsoring the video.
How long is this video
On
for?
June 29th, 1764, one of the most significant tornado events in meteorological history was beginning to unfold. In the late afternoon, an F2 tornado dropped beneath the cloud layer, where it began its path of destruction through an oak forest. Trees were flattened and thrown into the air as the tornado slowly grew wider and stronger. Now at EF3 strength, the tornado tore the roofs off of houses in a small village, claiming one life. It then crossed a lake where witnesses claimed it created a mini tsunami. The tornado continued to grow to over 250 meters wide. Now at EF4 strength, the twister scoured the earth, leaving scars in the soil while destroying an entire birch forest. Continuing along its path of destruction, the tornado would eventually reach over 900 meters across. At this point, it destroyed a strong
That's a Minecraft.
mansion, lifting massive boulders high up into the sky, the kind of destruction only an EF5 would create. After about 19 miles, the tornado finally weakened and roped out. Modern researchers today estimate that this tornado could have had wind speeds over 300 miles per hour, making it one of the most powerful tornadoes on record. So where was this? Texas? Oklahoma? Perhaps Kansas? No, it was in northern Germany. This
Germany?
is known as the 1764 Voigt Germany tornado. This event was truly insane and has been rated by modern researchers as
1764?
an EF5 or T11, totally maxing out both the Fujita and Toro scale. It created a 19-mile path of destruction from Feldberg to Helt, Germany, which at the time was the Holy Roman Empire. The lake tsunami that destroyed Cobblestone Mansion, truly an insane event. And you might be wondering, How on earth do we know about this? Like, how can we be so sure that this event was so insane? Well, against all odds, the tornado was extremely well documented by Gottlob Burchard Gensmer. Sorry if I butchered that pronunciation. He was a German scientist that pretty much did exactly what the National Weather Service does today. He went out, surveyed, and documented the damage. We're talking a 77-paragraph,
Dang.
detailed paper. He was like the original Ted Fujita.
Oh.
Modern historians and researchers looked at his documentation and concluded that the winds from this tornado would have had to have been in the 300-mile-per-hour range. Truly an insane event. One quick side note, the ruins shown on screen may be remnants from this exact tornado. I'm
Wow.
not entirely sure if these ruins were already there before the tornado, but either way, it was definitely in the path.
Injured? Don't delay. Get the Bernston Advantage today. 1-800-CALL-SAM.
That's me. 60 seconds before the most important